Hey, it's Matt Forrest Essenwine with another edition of Wit and Wordplay here deep inside my pillow fort, as always. And I wanted to talk about a really fun activity that you can really. It's great getting kids excited about words, and it's not just about poetry. I mean, it is, but it's not just about poetry. It's something called found poetry. It's a great way to get kids, and adults too, stretching their brains and thinking about how words work, and not just how words themselves work, like a noun like run. It could be a noun, could be a verb. You know, some words might be a verb, it could be an adverb, it could be an adjective, might be a noun. You know, it's a way to get kids thinking about how words work with each other. But it's all a lot of fun, too. It's called found poetry. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's poetry that you find. And it could be something as simple as getting kids some newspapers and magazines. You know, kids love hands-on stuff. So get some newspapers and magazines, cut out the words. Not all of them, but just, you know, some words that the kids think that they can use to create a couple of sentences, maybe headlines or advertisements or what have you. And then you paste them onto a piece of paper, like construction paper, and you get a poem. I'll give you an example. This is something from a couple of years ago. I did a workshop on found poetry at a local library, and this was the one I created. Visit hometown today. Search for good news and celebrate. Make a difference. Art raises community. Plan on it. Better begin. So, now, that's not a poem that's going to win any awards. It's not going to be published anytime soon. But it was a fun little exercise. And again, it's great to get kids thinking about words while using their hands. You know, how many English classes have you ever been to that were tactile, right? So that's something to consider. Another way you can go about found poetry is spine poetry, which I have another video on, where you take the spines of books. The book titles are on the spines of the books, and you just categorize them, sort of organize them into sentences. And you can find the video on spine poetry here on my YouTube channel. One other way of finding poetry is simply take a book, like an old book no one's using anymore, maybe something from the thrift shop, and find a page, like a novel, whatever it is, find a page that you think has some good words, and just black out all the words that you don't need. And you only keep the words you do need. And you can find, you know, maybe a sentence or two within that page. You might pull out a word here or two words there, and by the time you've done it, you've got a black page with these words separated, and that's found poetry. And we'll probably do a video on that at some point as well. Another way of finding poetry is with something called it's traditional found poetry, but it's done in kind of a cool new way. My friend Irene Latham has a book. This poem is A Nest, from A Word Song and Boyd's Mills and Kane. And she took a larger poem that she had written called A Nestling, and she found short little poems, like only a sentence, you know, some not even a sentence, what she calls nestlings, inside this larger poem. And so I tried it with one of my favorite poems ever, and that is this one, Ozymandias, from Percy Bysshe Shelley. Now, if you don't know who Percy Bysshe Shelley is, he was the husband of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. So he was a poet, and this is probably the most famous poem that he ever wrote. It's about Ramses II, the Egyptian pharaoh. It basically, I'm not going to read the whole poem, but it describes a giant statue that has fallen apart. It's basically rubble. And the bottom of the pedestal says, "Look on my works, ye mighty and despair." And there's nothing. I mean, so it shows the impermanence of our world. And it's a great poem, very famous. So I thought I would try to see what I could find for little nestlings inside the poem. And I did. I found 3. And for our purposes here, I highlighted one of them in green, one of them in blue, one of them in yellow. And here they are. Wreck. Antique legs, a shattered sneer, survive the heart. And then decay. In the desert, the sculptor's lifeless hand remains. And then visage, a wrinkled lip mocked the pedestal of kings. And I had originally written the Boundless Bear Sands part, but I'm getting rid of that. I just like ending it with the fact that the wrinkled lip mocked the pedestal of kings. But that's what you can do with poetry, because it's never really done. You just keep tweaking it and editing it over the years. When you think you might want to change it, you change it up. But those are just some examples of found poetry. One final example that I want to share with you is this one here. Catch Your Breath, Writing Poignant Poetry, from my friend Laura Purdy Salas, who included a number of poems by a number of her friends. And this is a great book if you have like maybe middle school, upper middle grade, high school kids who are learning how to write poetry. It offers some great tips, examples, and that sort of thing for writing poetry. And she included a poem of mine called Voice. Expressing unspoken thoughts and burning desire, a voice that is not part of the narrative pauses for a breath. The essential commands and extreme situations still seem confusing. Don't get discouraged. Slow down, evaluate your work, and take your time through talent, steely focus, and faith to change the world. And the reason I share that poem is because it actually is a found poem. I had decided just on a whim. I do a lot of voiceover work. So when I'm not writing children's poetry or books, I do radio voiceovers, TV. I've done some video games. And I went to a whole bunch of different voiceover websites and pulled phrases from wherever on the different websites. And so each line of that particular poem is a different phrase that I pulled, or a word that I pulled from a different voiceover website. And most found poetry doesn't get published, but it can, and there's proof positive, and catch your breath. So again, just some examples of found poetry. I hope you enjoy it with your kids. Again, it's a great way not only for kids but for grown-ups to stretch your brains and just kind of think about how words work. And again, getting kids to have fun with words but using their hands, having that tactile experience. Yeah, you can't beat it. So check it out, and be sure to check out all the other videos I have here for Wit and Wordplay. If you like it, please leave a comment, share with your friends and neighbors, subscribe, and do all that stuff that the YouTubers tell you to do. And I will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.